Powered by Red Media in partnership with TSN, it is season 6 of the Rain Dregs podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Tim Hortons. Celebrating the return of warmer weather as a Canadian rite of passage and trying new drinks in the Tim's cold beverage lineup is the perfect way to get this season going. Their new Oreo Mocha Ice Cap is a twist on Tim's iconic ice cap, made even more irresistible with a blend of mocha flavor Oreo cookie pieces in each and every sip. And backed by popular demand, we've got the epic Oreo double stuffed ice cap with Oreo cookie crumble, vanilla syrup, vanilla flavored whipped topping, and even more Oreo cookie crumble on top. Ray, how are you doing, my friend? Everything good? Good weekend?
Everything's good. Yeah, good weekend. I thought I was going to get a little golf in, Dregs, but I'm listening to you reading the Oreo cap and all that, and it's been raining here for 3 days. I need a hot chocolate. It's bloody cold. So yeah, good day, good cold, weekend at home. Good weekend at home, and off to Dallas tomorrow morning for the Western Conference Finals. So looking forward to that. How about you?
Yeah, all good. You know, spent a little bit of time in the interior of BC, celebration of life for my lovely sister-in-law, Carlene Fraser, who passed. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's a mix of emotions. It was a sad weekend. But in saying that, great to be around family and toast the wonderful lady, mom, grandmother that she was. So, and you get right back into the cycle here, right? I got off the plane from Kelowna yesterday and zipped straight into studio and got there for puck drop. So
how'd that go? How was the game?
Well, we're going to get into it hard here on the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast, coming up in headlines brought to us by Ekholm in just a moment. But before we get into the Ekholm headlines, Ray, this stuff usually doesn't annoy me because I have no skin in the game. I'm a hockey insider, right? I tell stories. I try and pull you behind the curtain and all that. But I wake up this morning to news that some nut bar on X actually posted the home address of Mitch Marner. Now, fans can throw their sweaters onto the ice. I don't like it, but you want to throw a $300 sweater onto the ice. Okay, fine. It's going to charity, and the charity will benefit because money will be made. Same thing they do with hat trick hats and all that. I'm like, whatever. You invested deeply into that seat, disrespectful, sure, but whatever. But I know we're going to talk about Matthews and Marner and all that. I just, this is a bit of the emotional side of me because I think of what I would have been like. I remember walking through Walmart with Katie and Mason when they were little guys, and some guy grabbed me by the arm and like literally turned me around because he was upset at something that I had said or reported. And it was every ounce of restraint for me not to clock that guy. I'm just like, I'm with my kids. They don't understand what's going on here. And here we are. So I can imagine the emotion that is going through Marner. Okay, hours after being eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs. And this is why, a part of it anyway, why it's hard for Canadian teams, in this case the Maple Leafs, to attract players in certain situations, right? Put yourself in that environment with Matt and Landon as young boys. Maybe you were there. You just didn't have that same social media, right? But imagine
didn't
how
have the profile.
Be.
Well, it's not even angry. I mean, I think your first thought would be, maybe it would be anger, but it would be safety.
Yeah. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. What are we doing here? Like, can I stay in this house? Do I need to move? And in all likelihood, no, he's fine. But are you going to sit there and find out? Like, what a jackass! Like, what does this person think that he's gaining out of this? Like, God, sports can be so awesome. Yeah. And your team doesn't always win. Rarely does your team win, put it that way, right? Mm-hmm. Rarely. But like this is so far over the line. It's
gross.
It's just not right.
Well, and you know what? That's all we need to do in terms of talking about it, because I don't want to bolster the platform But when Marner goes into free agency and leaves, this could be a big part of it, small part of it. That's up to Mitch as a new father to protect his family. All right, well, let's get into it. And the headlines in this edition of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast are brought to us by Ekholm. Hey, if you're a skilled tradesperson or construction pro and you're looking for work in Western Canada, Ekholm wants to hear from you. Ekholm is a North American construction leader, proud to be one of Canada's original industrial contractors. They're building some of the largest multi-year industrial projects in Western Canada. You can be a part of it. They're looking for skilled tradespeople, construction pros to join the team. Join Ekholm now by sending your resume to trades@ekholm.com. All right. Game 7, Leafs Florida Panthers, obviously goes off the rails, Ray, in that second period. Florida is so damn good, though. So good. The moment never seems too big for the defending Stanley Cup champions. So fans pour out of Scotiabank early. The sweaters, as I mentioned, are tossed on the ice. And post-game, Toronto Maple Leafs captain Auston Matthews described the meltdown, saying as the game went on, they weren't on the same page and had too many passengers. Is that just words pouring out of the captain's mouth minutes after being eliminated again?
I assume so. How big can the book be to be on the same page? Florida must have a 3-page book because everybody's on the same page. Are the Leafs reading out of a 1,000-page book? Like they can't find the page? The game was shocking to me. Like when he said as the game went on, was that in the first part when the shot attempts were 21-0?
Yeah.
Was it in that part? Or was it in when they gave up 3 goals in 6 minutes in the second period? And the game was pretty much gone. Like that. And to say there's too many passengers, like there's got to be a mirror in there somewhere. It doesn't matter if Steven Lorentz, with all due respect, plays the game of his life in Game 7. That's about the top end of your roster to lead your team, to pull your team along. That's 6 Game 7s for those guys that got no goals, Marner and Matthews. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
In the first 2 games of the series, they scored 9 goals on Florida. And they had a 3-1 lead in Game 3. Like, the series was there for them. As the pressure mounted, they lost 4 out of 5 games. They clearly don't have, as a group, they don't have the connection to fight through the toughest of times. And that's not opinion. That's just what we've been watching here for 9 years. Like they do not have the connection in the toughest points of the game to carry through. And so I see Marner yelling at the bench, wake the F up. Well, wake the F up then. You, not the next guy. You, Matthews, we're not on the same page. You're the captain. Find the page. Like the guy in the suit behind the bench, what's he going to do after a while? This is the team. The team had over 100 points. I was stunned how meekly they went away. The last 2 home games were, like, honestly, you can come up with any other storyline you want, and they were a flat-out embarrassment. To lose 12-2 at home in games 5 and 7, like that is stunning to me. And so, I heard you last night, Drake, saying, you got to acknowledge what Florida is too. When they play a first period, it doesn't feel like, oh my God, that's it, they're out of gas. They just go get a rest and play the second period. Like they're like a steamroller. They just keep pushing along, and they know as the series goes on, they can impose more of their will. And the more that they did, Toronto just folded. Like that was as big an indictment of, I know they talk about the core 4. You can throw Riley in there too. Like the first goal last night, as I'm thinking of this, Drake, that was a perfect illustration of the 2 teams. Florida always, it plays on their toes, right? If they make a mistake, it's because they're diving in Riley went up into that pinch and he was hesitant and he was tentative, and then he got beat. And then they still have 3 guys coming back into the play, Toronto does, but they don't get to the shooter. Like, the play was tentative and it was poorly played, and it's 1-0. And that might have happened the other way, but it would have been a hell of a lot harder shot for the shooter because everybody would have been diving into the play. And I thought that was really an indicative point of what the Panthers are and what the Leafs are.
I mean, Craig Berube, normally, as we know, is very controlled on the bench. He's very controlled with the media. He doesn't give you more than he has to, right? And sure, early in the year, we did see some examples of where Berube would lose his cool a little bit, but that was just a stern reminder to the guys of how he demands you play. He looked exasperated for a stretch last night, just yelling at his guys to get their feet moving, to engage. And I think that really amplifies the point that you just made, because you're helpless back there, right? As a coach, and probably somewhat in disbelief that that's the response when these guys are pushed against the wall. That's the response. And it has to be unacceptable.
Well, I mean, it would be stunning to sit there and just look at the season just dissipate in front of you, right? You've got one chance here. You're at home. The building's as revved up as it's going to be, and then you come out and you got nothing. Here's another thing about the same page and too many passengers. What line was the difference maker in that series? Would you say, if you could just pick one line, what was the line?
Well, probably the flow, like the Marchand line for me.
Correct. So that's their third line. It's Lundell, it's Luostarinen, and it's Marchand. Who is that going to be on the Maple Leafs? Like, who is that going to be?
Good question.
I know we're going to get into in a minute here.
Yeah.
Who can and who should be back and all that. The Leafs' bottom 6 in the playoffs, I believe's got 3 goals.
Yeah.
The entire bottom 6. Max Domi had them all.
All 3. Yeah.
So the other 5 guys, well, I guess Nick Robertson got one too. Sorry. So Nick Robertson had one.
Right.
The other guys are doing what? And so when you say there's too many passengers, is Matthews pointing to those guys? Or is he talking about Tavares and himself and Marner,
Willie? Yeah.
Willie. So I'm just thinking, Matthews had 1 goal in the series. Marner had none. Tavares didn't score after game 3.
Yeah.
Nor did Nylander. Jona Gadjevich had 2 goals.
Yeah.
He plays 8 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Florida has 17 individual goal scorers on their roster. 17. So if you're looking at the teams and reading out of a book and all that, same page bullshit, like, they're not good enough to beat a team like Florida, and they didn't have the internal connection in that team to be able to withstand that pressure. They got flattened.
I'm certainly not going to hang this series on Joseph Woll. I'm not. I mean, he came in a trying circumstance, right? But as we're doing the post game Sunday night, we get to the end and I'm like, geez, I think we missed something here. Not a big item, but a factor. And that was Sam Bennett taking out Anthony Stolarz, right? In game 1. And the only reason it mattered is because of what we saw. Exhibit A, Max Domi scores a pretty big goal. It's 3-1 at that point. Life is back in Scotiabank, right? The pushback is there. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. Let's give full credit to the Florida Panthers, but it's there if they just seize it. And then boom, that 4-1 goal where that just Woll can't let that in. You can't let that in.
Go in there.
And it's game, set, and match, and the series is over. And I'm thinking that, all right, again, I'm not laying this series lost the feet of Joseph Woll, But it does take me back to how the series started. And that Bennett forearm that took Anthony Stolarz out of the series, it turned out to be a factor, along with everything else.
But we do like in all fairness, it was, the last contact with Bennett, but we do know that he did get hit in the chicklets earlier, right? Like there was more to that.
For sure. It was a combination. You're right.
You can go through individual players on that roster, and I guess we'll have plenty of time, and the postmortems will happen and all that.
Yeah.
The goaltending was not good enough for them. However, in game 5 and 7, they could have played both guys in net and they would have lost both games. I mean, they could have played them together and they would have lost both games.
Yeah.
So it's always, we always look at the goaltending because it's so critical, right? Like when Toronto finally, got out of the mud at the start of the game, they had a couple of chances and Bobrovsky made the save. Like Lawrence hit him in the chest on the breakaway.
Yeah.
I mean, wasn't a great shot, but they had a couple of chances and Bobrovsky made the saves that kept the game right where it needed to be for Florida. And Toronto probably didn't get those saves. Now, nobody was talking about Joe Woll in game 6.
Yeah, pretty good.
When he had it, right? So this is a top to bottom collapse by them. There's not a guy that escapes it, I don't think. When you look at the way that they lost 4 out of 5 games. Right? They had a 2-0 lead. They lost 4 of the next 5. And it had a 3-1 lead in the third one. You can go back, like Nylander has that quasi breakaway in overtime of game 3.
Yeah.
He scores. Yeah. Series is probably over. Bobrovsky made the save that you're talking about.
Yeah.
He made that save. And then they get the lucky bounce that bounces in and it's a new day.
Well, you're bang on, though. I mean, no one escapes scrutiny in this case. So let's look at the potential for change here. And some of it is going to be organic. Right off the top of the podcast, we talked about, the scrutiny that Mitch Marner has faced fairly and unfairly. He's been the whipping boy for the Toronto Maple Leafs in this market for a good chunk of his young career. I mean, let's be fair and let's be honest. So he's an unrestricted free agent, as is John Tavares, on July 1st. I think that there was, and I use the word was, a comfort level for the Maple Leafs to give as much as 13.5 to Mitch Marner on an 8-year term. Now we know they got to the deadline. We know that Brad Treliving had conversations with the Carolina Hurricanes. We know that Marner was included in those trade conversations. He would not move his trade protection. He would not waive it. Okay. So does that tell you that it's just time? It's time to take that 13.5, if that's what you're willing to pay, and reinvest it in different players like you described. And does that, if you're willing to go there, extend to Tavares, who will be 35, I believe, in September. He's 34 now. Scored 38 times last year, this past season, 38 times. So you've got 11 million. There's a lot of money that Brad Treliving can work with. Is that what you'd be doing as the general manager? Just cut and bait entirely? Or would you let Mitch go? You maybe don't have a choice. Focus a little bit more on Tavares, and then maybe even extend your shopping into the blue line, and wonder if it's time to maybe consider trying to convince Morgan Riley to waive his no move clause. How deep would your knife cut here, right?
Well, I think before I get to that, I think the first real question becomes, is Brendan Shanahan back? Right? And I don't know, his contract's up. Like if Brendan's not there, does everything change? Right? Like Keith Pelly's now at the top of MLSE. Does he change view on all of it? And then once that decision's made, then you get into what we're going to talk about now, which is the stuff, like that's the boardroom stuff, but the boardroom stuff matters for the decision makers. And you'll know more than most about that. But to me, we're almost a decade into this. Do you continue on or do you shift course? So if you decide, okay, we're going to let Marner and Tavares walk, the free agent class this year is generally accepted to be not very good, not very deep.
Right.
Where are you getting the new players from? It's going to be tough to sign them in free agency because there's just not a lot of options. It's going to be really tough to trade for because they don't have any draft picks. They don't have a lot of young prospects. So now you're in a little bit of a corner here. If you sign Marner, what's Marner's salary right now? About 11.5, something like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're looking for $2 more million to sign Marner. Your Tavares is going to take a pay cut from he's 11, right?
Yeah.
So you can balance that money out. But if you balance that, if you want, you could balance that out. But if you balance it out and you bring back the same group, like, what are you doing? How many chances or how long are you going to wait to maybe the tumblers click together? They've shown that when the pressure gets there, they've not been able to deliver to the next level. In my view, the Leafs need to reimagine what their team can be and is. And that goes as deep into it as you want to go.
Yeah.
Because they can't seem to take the next step. So just paying them more money, that doesn't make them take the next step.
No.
I read all this stuff about, Steve Yzerman, how he changed his game from 130-point Steve into two-way Steve. But that was in him. He was willing to do that. He was able to do that. You know who's doing that right now? Leon Draisaitl. He's playing with Kasperi Kapanen and Vasily Podkolzin. And they're playing him in a checking role. Yeah. Can you imagine somebody in this group taking that on? I can't.
No.
I just can't. It doesn't seem like they're built that way. So I look at it would be remarkable if this team looks similar next year.
Yeah.
Because how could you expect it to be any better? What would make it better with the current group of players?
No. Agreed.
I think the decision has to be, if I've got this money available, how do I make my team different but effective? Right? Until game 5, nobody on Florida had over 8 points. Nobody.
Right.
Look at Carolina's roster. I'm not saying you put those teams together, but those are teams that are year after year, two of them, Florida and Carolina, year after year, they're pretty good. Florida's number one player this year had 80 points. Maybe there's a different way to imagine this team, and it might not be the 110-point players or 100-point players. It just might not be that, because this does not work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Brad Treliving is going to earn his check as general manager. And I can't imagine it doesn't start right at the draft with some form of trade, whatever capacity that is, because your point is well made on free agency. Sure, you can try and poach the Florida Panthers again, like you did last year, right? And maybe you overpay to acquire Sam Bennett. If Florida doesn't find a way to keep Sam Bennett, maybe you overpay to bring in Ekblad, right? If you've made a move that might include, say, a Morgan Riley. We're just conjuring up ideas. But the plate is full for Treliving. Absolutely full in terms of the work required, because what has gone on for, as you say, almost a decade now just doesn't cut it. So different.
You bring up a really interesting point. I do think rather, because of the limited number of impact free agents that are going to be available, and everybody's going to trip over themselves for the 6 guys that everybody wants. Um, I believe the draft will be so fun this year for us to watch it because of the number of trades that will be made, because they're the teams that want to improve. They're not going to be able to wait a week to free agency and say, oh, I could look, there's 4 left wingers there, because there isn't.
Yeah.
It's just the way the cycle is this year. So it will be I think a really interesting draft season.
Ugh. Well, it'll be interesting from a Leafs perspective, even in the days ahead here this week, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be a mass media availability with or without Brendan Shanahan, Brad Treliving, Craig Berube, the players in their media exit interviews, all that coming up. So we're going to get over to the Oilers and the Dallas Stars and start that preview. But first, how about a real quick thought on the East, which gets underway tomorrow, and that's Florida taking on Carolina. So just give us a real quick preview of what you expect in that Eastern Conference final.
Low scoring, tight, physical. Carolina is going to try and play as fast as they can, and Florida is going to play as physically as they can. It could come down to the goaltender, really. I mean, we talked about Joel Woll earlier, but Freddie Anderson has had an amazing 2 rounds.
Yeah.
He's been amazing. And historically, as the pressure gets heavier,
yes,
it doesn't go Freddie's way. So here's an enormous opportunity for him. Will be interesting to see if, like, Carolina really has to work to score, which is why they traded for Rantanen, right? Like that's why they traded for him. They really work hard to score. Florida makes everybody work hard to score. Like I think this is a series of 3-1 empty net goal games. And I don't see it being like a race up and down the ice and 5-4 and all that stuff. I just don't see it.
All right. Well, we'll have plenty of opportunity to look at that series as it unfolds. Yeah.
Can I just throw one thing in as we closed on Toronto?
Of course. Sure.
All the best to Chris Rooney. The official that got fortunately no eye damage. He's got a nasty cut.
You saw the picture, right? I saw it this morning.
Yeah.
Ooh, boy.
And hopes to be working in this next round, which is really awesome given the way that all looked. And man, there's been about 3 or 4 officials that have been hurt in this playoffs, and that looked scary last night. But
it definitely
good to see Chris is good.
Agreed. So if we shift to the West, the Oilers and the Stars open Wednesday. We do have to look back to the conclusion of Winnipeg and the Dallas Stars, and the Jets obviously suffering that heart-wrenching game in the loss to Dallas on Saturday. To see Mark Scheifele just helplessly sitting in the penalty box when Thomas Harley scored on the power play in overtime, of course, then followed by the outpouring of support for Scheifele, who learned of the passing of his father, Brad, just hours earlier, man. Tough is obvious. But I as I'm watching, I felt myself just brought into all the emotions of the game. The finality, of course, of the series, how disappointing it must be for the Winnipeg Jets. But then you see, Scheifele obviously hugging his teammates and the support that they have, for one of their many leaders. But then the embrace of Jamie Benn and Mark Scheifele or Mason Marchment. And you can assume, I don't know, I didn't see the soundbite or any of the media coverage.
I just saw an interview with it.
Yeah.
And
but
he was talking about
he would know
his dad
deeply
and,
personally what it feels like to go through something that significant, right? I mean, your thoughts as that series comes to a close and just how difficult it was.
Incredibly sad, like just to see Mark sitting there and, hanging his head in the box when the puck goes into the net. I mean, it's about the game. It's about his life. It's about his dad. It's about the overwhelming sense of loss for him there. It was just so sad to watch. When my, not to, dads and hockey players or dads and athletes, or this is
Yeah.
what I know in my life. Now it might be different with other people, but I don't know that. In my life, my dad and I did everything together. We drove to the rink. We had something to eat after practice. Before we went home, we talked about the game. After I turned pro, I'd call right after the game. I'd call my dad. We'd talk about the game again. Like when he passed, it was just an enormous sense of loss. And when I was reading and watching all the players talk about Mark's dad and the father's trip, and they'd all gotten to know him a little bit or quite well because he'd been there a while, Mark, of course, and then how it all, like the expansion of the people that are in your circle because of that.
Yeah.
It was just so incredibly sad. And man, to the Scheifeles, we only can offer our condolences. And one thing that struck me, man, I don't know what the Lowrys did raising their kid, but man, Adam
As
Lowry
good
had
as it
something.
gets.
Oh my God! Like just the sense of support that he needed to give.
Yeah.
Like everybody's kind of standing around. Boom, he's right in the penalty box with Mark. Like I'm so impressed with him.
Mm-hmm.
Several times this year when things have happened, he's been right there as the center of support. And
Yeah.
I think I just, that was one of the saddest things I've to just watch.
Well said, and the credit certainly earned by Adam Lowry, no doubt about that. And you know what, Ray? Tip of the hat to the Dallas Stars as well. I mean, just a class organization. Pete DeBoer post game in acknowledging the passing of Mark's dad and how difficult it had to have been for Scheifele to play in that game. I mean, incredibly tough. And look, I will say this on the podcast. I didn't want to correct it on social media. Tom Gallardi reached out and said, look, he wishes he'd have thought of offering the private jet to get Mark back to Kitchener, Ontario to be with his family. Someone reported that it was Tom Gallardi who did that, and it wasn't him. It was somebody else. But he would have done it as most owners would do. That speaks to the family and the tight fraternity that most pro sport is. But in this case, how important family is to basically everyone around the National Hockey League, from owners all the way throughout an organization.
At the end of the day, it's all you got.
It's all you got. Okay, well, let's look at this Western Conference final then, right? If you're Chris Knobloch, head coach of the Edmonton Oilers, Raymond, what is your main focus now going up against a team that is so good and not much better, obviously, with the acquisition of Mikko Rantanen? You've got Miro Heiskanen, who's back in the mix, and he's healthy. What's your main focus if you're Knobloch?
Hoping that my team didn't lose anything over the last couple of days, because that's as solid a performance over a couple of games from the Oilers that I think even back into last year, like they took apart Vegas, and that was just so impressive. Will be really interesting to see how the matches go. You probably need to get, like you could probably use Ekholm here, because it would be nice to have that horse on the ice against Rantanen.
Yeah,
so
and I don't think, just to interject, I don't think he's going to be available Game
Yeah.
5, 4 if they're really lucky. You know?
But that's what I mean. It would be nice out of the
Yeah.
gate here. So
Yeah.
you don't. So that's probably, do you play Nurse there? Because he's your biggest, most stout defender. Like, right? You need heft against Rantanen. Do you play
That's a great
Draisaitl's
word.
line? Do you need Draisaitl's line against him? So at least when Rantanen's around the front, you've got another guy that can lean on him that's as big as him. So for Knobloch, I don't really want to change much. He's got this knack. Knobloch does. As the series gets on, he seems to be able to find the right tweak and pull a guy in, move a guy out, shift a defense pair. He did it all last year. There's a stat. They're 14-2 in games 4 to 7 in the last 2 years of a series. And that to me is about adjustments made to put players in a better spot.
Yeah.
So Knobloch quietly is a really good tactician. And I think he's going to have to be, because Pete DeBoer is too, right?
Yeah.
Like Pete's a hell of a coach. Riddle me this. He's been to the Western Conference Finals 6 years in the last 7. He's been fired twice.
It's so bizarre.
It's insane. And so that's what I think from the Edmonton side. From the Dallas side, you know what I like for them? A couple of things. One, they've got the best goalie in the series. And Ottinger has been really good. 2, Miro Heiskanen played about 25 minutes in Game 6. And if he's back, as he is, that's a difference maker. And 3 is, here they are in the conference final, and they've got about 4 forwards that haven't done a thing.
Right.
Matt Duchene doesn't have a goal in the playoffs. Jamie Benn's got 1. Jason Robertson's only played 5 games. It always takes him a little bit of time. We saw that at the start of the year, coming back from an injury. Yeah. If those guys find a little bit of their game, I think that's really good news for Dallas.
Are you noticing, and we'll quickly wrap here, but there's a spiciness to Connor McDavid, but I don't mean in a negative way, and I don't mean in a pissy way. I don't. I can appreciate his frustration at times when he feels like the media isn't giving the Oilers enough credit for the areas that they're good in and the lessons that they've learned, through the varying paths that they've had to take to not, to just earn their postseason stripes, if you will. Where do you think that comes from? Is it just honesty? Just frustration with not getting enough credit? Where do you think some of that is coming from of late?
Well, I think part of it is that no matter what the Oilers do, or no matter what McDavid does, it never goes away unless they win. Right? Like that's McDavid is as great a player as there is in the game. And there'll always be but you can't win. Oh, you didn't do this. Right? And so after a while, I'm sure that gets more than a little bit frustrating, right? And so that's where I think it comes from. I think he probably is looking around and going, wait a minute, there's 4 teams left. Last year we were one of the last 2. Like, what are you guys not seeing? And so I think there's a little bit of defensive-ness, but also a little bit of we're good. And whether you guys think so or not, we're a good team. And so when they got through Vegas, I was kind of amused, actually, just with like, there wasn't great, we won here. There was like, now you guys still didn't pick us. Well, now we're on to the next round.
Right.
And they're a different team. They have a different feel to their team. And can they score 1 more goal than last year? When you think of it, 100 games long, that's what they're trying to do, is score 1 more goal to win 1 more game. And It must be just incredibly difficult when you get to this point in the season.
Is there a team that bounces to the forefront for you in this Final Four? I mean, is it the defending Stanley Cup champions and
Yes.
how well-oiled they are right now? Yeah.
Yeah, it's Florida. I think they have built love to use culture, right? We love culture. They've built
Yeah.
a culture that it doesn't particularly matter who scores as long as somebody does. Nobody seems to stress too much if they're not scoring. You don't
Mhm.
like last year, Sam Reinhart scored 60 goals. This year he didn't. The same
Right.
player, does the same thing. Barkov led their team with 50 assists. He does the same thing. I'm sure he'd like to get a few more points. He got 75, 72 points this year or something like
Right.
that. Like they're so big. And I think this is one of the differences for the Oilers. They can absorb the heaviness of the
Mhm.
latter rounds of the playoffs. Florida can. They can absorb that. And some teams just can't. And so there's a little bit to that. I'm wondering about Dallas. Can some of their smaller forwards stand the heft and the
Yeah.
size of the Oilers? We're going to find out. But Florida's the team for me. I'm I, I'm like, man, they very easily, we could be looking at the same two cities again
We
as we did
could.
last year. It's I know gee, really? It's only two teams, but it kind of feels a little bit like that. I think the West Series is going to be phenomenal. I think it's going to be I'll be really disappointed if it's not a great series.
I agree with that. All right. Those are your headlines. Thank you, Akon. And you, as we wrap up Rain Drinks, are in the home stretch here, right? I mean, you're going into the conference final and then onto the golf course
Yes,
and into the office.
that is the plan. That is the plan. I did say to Chris Cuthbert yesterday. I sent him a text and I said, have a great game. Have a great game 7. And if the Leafs lose, I'll see you in Edmonton on Wednesday. And he sends a note back. He goes, well, you never know what's going to happen. He goes, by the way, don't go to Edmonton. The game's in Dallas. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. The fact that he corrected me
Oh
really is
boy, no
concerning to
kidding.
me. Like that's concerning. So yeah, we'll
Okay,
get started in Dallas on Wednesday.
because you mentioned CC, Chris Cuthbert, I'm going to mention a Gord Miller experience I had over the weekend. Okay. So Gord Miller is turning 60. Okay.
Yes.
So he's organizing, it sounds like he's organizing his own birthday party.
Oh,
That's
come
the
on.
way it sounds to me. Yeah. So
Okay.
I get an electronic invite, and the invite is to Darren and Barb Dreger.
Oh, fabulous.
I
I'm
hit
sure
reply.
you really let that slide, didn't you?
Well, it wasn't from Gord, it was from one of the organizers, but I'm like, I appreciate that. By the way, who's Barb? And then I get a text message from Gord like about 5 minutes later. He goes, sorry, that was my bad. I know it's Holly. I have no idea. It's so ridiculous.
Uh,
But I think and then so he goes into social media. And so our 25th wedding anniversary, which by the way, our wedding anniversary was yesterday, May 18th, 34 years. It's a long time.
34 years.
34 years.
Congratulations,
Yeah.
and congratulations to Holly in
Yeah,
particular.
yeah, exactly. So to go back 10 years to our 25th, we had a anniversary party. So lots of friends and family were around. And lovely friend of ours, Barb Platt, was there. She's just the life of the party, right? So someone takes a picture of Barb and I don't know, I tweeted it or something like this. Like I just kind of doing what I do, making fun of Barb in the moment. But it was misunderstood and it appeared like Barb was my
Barb was your
wife
wife?
in this picture.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome.
So Miller sends this to me trying to explain why they made the mistake. So anyway, I don't think Holly
Yeah.
was as amused, but that's my gourd story for
Yeah,
the year.
he's over at the World Championships, and
Yeah.
as he's now a senior citizen, he gets a few days off here. So
Oh, of course he does. Yeah.
you know, so
He's got time to
but
organize his own birthday party.
there you go. There you go.
All right, buddy. Well, safe travels to Dallas. Don't go to
Yes,
Edmonton because
Dallas,
you'll miss
Dallas. I've
game
got the ticket.
one.
I got the plane ticket. I'll get to wherever that plane takes me. I'll be ready for game one.
Excellent. And we'll reconnect at some point later this week.
You betcha. Have a good one, Dregs. Everybody be well, and on to the conference final.
On to the conference final, and they should be beauties as Florida takes on the Carolina Hurricanes, the Edmonton Oilers opening on the road, taking on the Dallas Stars. And we'll be here to walk you through step by step right through to the Stanley Cup Championship final. That is another edition of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast. Thank you to our sponsors who continue to support us and make the pod possible. Our title sponsor, Tim Hortons, and thanks again to Ekholm. Until next time, stay safe, everybody.